Hello, welcome to the Q&A and critique number 69. It is currently 2021 UTC. I'm a little bit late, but thanks for joining either way. So today is a very interesting day for me. Lately, I've been working with this particular character that you see in the background here, and I actually made him in one day from concept image that was generated by Stable Diffusion to final rigged characters. So this character, I'm going to walk through or divide this session into two pieces. The first piece is about what is the process of making a character in a very quick, streamlined way. And the second piece is taking this character and the other one as well into a small little scene with some pre-layout and set up the scene ready for animation, hopefully within the next hour or hour and a half. So buckle your seatbelts, there's a lot to go through. Hopefully the bombardment of information is not too much, but I'll give you a quick process. So a word of warning, the process does require a lot of preparation before you can start to speedrun. And the reason is optimization and pipeline, which I'll be explaining a little bit later. But without further ado, I guess let's begin. So I'm here with some good friends of mine here, with Plebes and Bonsai. Shmuel was here earlier, but I think he had to drop out. And with that, I guess we can start. So if you, anytime during this chat, if you do have a question on Twitch, or if you do have a question on YouTube or Discord, feel free to write it, and I will queue it up for future sessions, or I'll try to answer it here live with some showcases and problem solving. So let's go. So I'm going to quickly explain here in this particular scene the process of working with this particular character. As you know, first things that we need is getting a concept, but once we have a concept based on reference images, we can build a character. So I'm going to start with these building blocks. So here's one building block here. And let me just quickly bevel it to make it interesting. So this particular building block is where we start, and this is the idea phase. With the idea phase, we need to get an image and then start modeling. And from there, we need to start creating the actual block out of the character, which I have talked about on Twitter if you are following. But then we do the block out using a kit bashing technique. So kit bashing is where you use an asset library. For example, I have a characters asset library that I created from CCO and CC BY assets and other assets that have been purchased on Gumroad elsewhere. And I use these pieces as if they were like mech parts or Lego pieces, and I put them together. And I call this process the block out, where you can take out the pieces and block it together. Then from there, we take the block out, and let me just get this title so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So here we have block out, and here we have the idea, the concept or the idea. Let me just throw in a material. Alright, so after we've done the block out, we go on to the next step, which is usually called a process of creating detail modeling. So the detail modeling is divided into two steps. I like to keep it nice and granular, so it's a little bit easy to work. So once we have the block out of the general shape of the character with the general pieces from the library, it's currently frozen for some reason. We can then, probably because it's compiling shaders, it always goes slow when I stream. I need a new computer. I think early next year I will have a budget for the new computer, which will mean higher quality streams and more responsive software. Until then, bear with me. So I guess I'll go from the audio aspect. So with blockout, we go into the detail modeling phase and I divide it into mid details and high details. So the mid details are like your secondary accents of what your character design is. You have the general silhouette shape in the blockout, but with the mid details you add in, for example, the personality, the general parameters of who this person is. And then you focus on the details, which is like the territory, bits of pieces, the buckles, the buttons, the handkerchief, the smaller details to help you get the job done. So if we take a look at this concept here, we can see that he has very broad shoulders, big thick arms, very, very baggy pants with thick cloth and boots, a belt, utility belt, a really cool triangular cone shaped dreadlocks, and a beard. And maybe he has a cigar for later. He also has this interesting glow. So I used Stable Diffusion to work on this using their Dream Studio website, so you can take a look and use it. Some credits for free. So beta.dreamstudio.ai, and I used maybe a bunch of different props. So here are the key pieces of art that I found. Some of them are from artists that I admire, others that are from a collection from Tumblr many years ago, and last but not least, I generated pieces from the actual prompts. So there are some pieces that I liked, some pieces that I didn't, some pieces that were coherent, some of them were not, but I could get some general ideas of who I wanted this person to be. And to help me with that concept, I also wrote a biography and a personality and a bit of a backstory. So I know who this character is, and I'm ready to work with. And I've got the references that I need as inspiration. I won't be actually using them in the project. And then back in the 3D space, I've done the block out. It's still frozen. It looks like it was an add-on that was causing the bug. Node preview add-on. Cancel. There we go. Oh, still not working. Now which add-on's screwing up? Sometimes, if Blender is crashing, you can cancel an action by hitting Ctrl-C in the console. And this will cancel whatever it is trying to process. But maybe there's a whole chain of things that are processing. But if it doesn't, this is an easy way of just on purpose crashing your Blender. But this keyboard interruption will actually cancel everything that's happening. But it just crashed anyway. So let me just reboot it. I'm using a 3.4 build. And my computer's at 100%. Why? Firefox. Tell you what, let's just close Firefox. What? Alright, let's start again. I did not clear out my RAM before. Okay. So we've done the block out, we've done the detail modeling, and we've done the medium details of the models. So let me just go through that process here in the 3D space. Once it loads. And with that, I could create the character. So if we go in the first build of my character, I used some models from if I can recall. Here we go. So as you can see here in this particular model, this was my first piece. So my first, I guess you could say final model to start remeshing and doing things. But my original block out was basically all of these details here, all these small little details that I don't need, including like I didn't have any legs. I didn't have the details of the boot, but I had some general idea of the shape of my character. If we take a look at my screen captures here. So here is the shape of the character, and I was using an asset library to create the general anatomy or the proportions of my character. I wanted nice big shoulders, and since I was using Mixamo, I had to put him into a T-pose, which I don't recommend, but for that particular rigging, you have to. And then from there, I focus on the medium details. So I got the shape, and now I work on the medium details. So I use this hair curves with the thickness and some bevels, and I used just simple block modeling to stay, and I used like a head shape from another model and then just shaped it into the design that I needed. And then I used a photo scans pants, cut off the body, cut off the feet, and used the photo scan pants for the base mesh for his legs. And I just extruded the pieces from this mesh that I bought on Gumroad. So using these pieces here, I could create the medium details, his secondary features. So we got the proportions, the size of his arms and his chest, but then we've got the head shape and his characteristics that drive his personality. So he's ready to go. So after that, we focus on the details. So this is the third step. So once we have the details, we can like add in the little bits of trinkets or personality or pieces. In this case, I would probably add more details to the cloth here if this was a feature model. But since I'm using the Painterly, I'm allowing myself to cheat. So let's go back into the 3D space and we'll unhide everything. So this is my base finished model. And this is what I'll be using as the final character piece. So that's good. So I got the general shape, I got the secondary details, which is his personality, and I got the tertiary details, which are his complements, to help you understand who he is, what he does, kind of figure him out a little bit more on top of those details. And from there, typically, you would go to the process of using, if we take a look here. So here's the list. So number 1 was the concept, number 2 was a block out, which is proportions and general shape. Proportions, shape or silhouette. And also, a neat little trick that you need to do to help you with your modeling nice and quick to make sure that your design is working well is in your sculpting mode. You can create a little window to the side here. And inside the view options, go inside your workspace view or viewport shading, turn it to flat, make your background black, and the single material white. So the lighting flat, single material white, and the background viewport black inside of the workspace view. This view will give you the ability to see a silhouette. There are add-ons that do this too. That gives you like a little thumbnail down in the corner. They're very cool, but they're paid. But this is just the quick and dirty way to check and see if I can tell what are the features of this character at the different angles. So I can see his the shape of the head. I wanted some small strands sticking out to kind of show his head asymmetrical shape. The big strands to give like the general shape of his head shape, which looks like a flower almost. The silhouette on the shoulder, the arms. I can see a little bit of his mech assistant exoskeleton on his legs, and the general shape of his boots to see that the cuffs are working, the shape of the boots are working, that his posture and everything is looking pretty cool. So this was a good way to test and see my design if it could work with a nice shape language. After that, You got your proportions, you got your shape and silhouette, and then you do your mid, your detail modeling. So you have the mid detail, which is basically personality, attributes. And then you have your fine detail or high detail, which is the decoration, the texture, and the complements. After that, the next step is we got to do the rigging. Typically, we skip this. I skip this step usually, which is UVs. First off, read topology, UVs, textures, shaders, which is all part of the concept of look development. So, look development. And read topology is a part of the process. It's called optimization, I guess you could say, for animation and rigging. So this whole entire process here, I actually skipped, or mostly skipped. So in the 3D space, if we go to the next scene, I'll go show you the next piece. Trace build number 2. You can see that the file is twice the size, mainly because I had to duplicate things and I rework the materials. So here's more of the final mesh. So you can see that I remeshed all of the sculpt pieces together. This could be a sculpt base mesh. I remeshed the beard. I kept the topology of the head. I kept the topology of the hair because it's relatively good. And I remeshed some of the pieces so that I can get this painterly blobby vibe. I added a bit more topology to the pants, remeshed the shoes, and that's all I needed to do. To do this, I use the action recorder, which I've talked about in a couple episodes back, where I prepare the original mesh and I create these scripts. So these scripts are basically, if I zoom in and show you, I use the action recorder add-on, which is free, and you can record a sequence of actions that are monotonous. For example, make a single user, join them together, apply the modifiers, toggle to edit mode, set the object mode, merge by distance, or do something like that. Set the object mode again, then apply the scale and make sure the object's good in one click. Mesh preparation, if we load this up, is applies a transform, removes all the materials, does a voxel remesh, merge by distance, sets the settings of the modifiers, adds another modifier, then does a merge by threshold, and then it removes the materials and then it remeshes everything together. Same thing with the UVs. It's another script which applies everything, does a smart UV project, and then does a texture size of another add-on that sets the texel density to be scaled to the world for the paint effect. It sets the shading to smooth and then goes back to object mode. So I don't even notice it. And then I apply the painterly, which is another script. Let me just load that up. Which basically applies a transform, applies a modifier, which loads up. In this case, I used a little bit of Python so that I could change the modifier of this particular object to have the geometry nodes LOD. So the geometry nodes LOD basically is where I have a high quality version of the paint shader hidden in the viewport, but in the viewport is a very performant version, so that when I hit render, it's going to look much better than it does in the viewport, but I can animate with it, or at least do some lighting, because my computer's slow. So with that, I just run these scripts and everything's good, and I do it for all the pieces, right? Imagine doing every one of these 20 steps or more, 30 steps on every single piece that I want to remesh. Or applying the material and the shaders on all of the pieces that I need over and over and over again. It gets boring very quickly. So using this action recorder, you can save some time and just run some scripts to help you do some things that you can program and store and export or keep them for your production pipeline without the need of coding. You can just hit record, do your things, and most of the things in Blender will work. Some things don't, like this stuff here, but with that, hopefully you don't hit that wall. So let's go back to our list. So retopology got done, super quick and dirty and easy. Look development of UVs, textures and shaders got done by my scripts. And then I have my final character. So let's take a look. There he is. The mesh with the painterly, and he's ready to be used and rigged. So the next step after that is going into rigging. So rigging here, by now, this is, I'm having lunch yesterday. I had finished the modeling, I had finished all the UVs and everything, and I finished all the materials and stuff. So now I need to start the rigging. This took a little bit longer, mainly because I used custom rigging. So rigging is divided into two options. If I load up that scene, let's take a quick look. So the first option is using a control rig or a guide rig from another software or another rigging system. If we take a look at my notes here, when you use Mixamo, you can rig this on the computer or on their service on the website, or you can download one of their rigs as a guide and download this FBX and apply this FBX to the rig inside of Blender or B for Artists. So in this case, I used a pre-established guide rig from Mixamo, and I aligned him, including the fingers, to his body so that I can use this rig for motion capture. And then, just like last week, what I mentioned last week, where we used the Mixamo add-on to generate a control rig, and where we used different types of theory to understand what's happening and how to work it, I use this system here to generate a full control rig using the Mixamo add-on. So let's go to that particular folder. So characters, I've already finished him, so he should be in here. Trace. The file is now 108 megs. I probably need to purge data soon. It's going to take a moment to load. But if we take a look at the note, we have the rigging of using a guide rig. So this guide rig, you use it both for Rigify, for Mixamo, for AutoRig Pro. You create a guide rig, and then you generate a control rig. And then from there, you create the custom rig changes or enhancements. So one thing that Mixamo doesn't have with this particular rig is that he doesn't have any controls for his hair, and he doesn't have any control for the robot legs in the back, which would require some mechanical rigging. So I need to think about this a little bit, and I need to actually create a rig which has controls for the eyes, for the hands, for the legs, because the hand controls, I spent some time to create a hand control rig which I personally like a lot, which has IKFK on the fingers. It has a hierarchical control system for the hands here, which is super nice. And so I could like individually control it or control them all together and pose my hands very easily, or I can switch in and out of an IKFK solution. So that's a hand rig that I wanted to add. I also have a pre-established eye rig which I wanted to attach to the rig, where the eyes actually has a system with the painterly applied and a look at. So I needed to add that as well. And I needed to add, using what I talked about, the last class or the last Q&A, to use the bendy bones, or the second to last I think it was. I used bendy bones on the hair, nice and simple. And with that, I've got my Mixamo rig, control rig, using the Mixamo add-on, Mixamo control rig add-on. I've got a couple of animations to start working with. And now inside the animation editor, the retargeting is not very good if you take a look at the animation. But you can use the NLA to combine your animation together so that you have different pieces of the rig. There we go. So I got a layer and standing and looking ahead baked animation from the add-on, which I taught you in the last session, episode 68. And with that, I'm ready to use this character. So let's take a look. So rigging, guide rig, generated control rig. And after that, I did a quick animation test. If we take a look at the work that I did yesterday, I did a quick little animation here, here, render pictures, look development, trace. So here it is. Last but not least, I did a quick little render just to test the shader, test that his rig was working, and I cannot render the file. Why not? Ah, crap, I overwrote it. Okay, it's in the Discord server, so let me just load that up for you. If you're in the Boi Addons server, you can possibly take a look at my latest video there. There it is. There he is. So now he's moving. I used an animation from looking at his hand. I made the hand. I fixed the movement of his arm and his head, the beard, a little bit of the hair. I reposed him and corrected his animation a bit more. I feel like he's heavier, tired, and tested the animation. This was all yesterday in an 8-hour day. So we got the concept, we got the modeling, we got the basic rigging, and with that we could actually finish this character. So we did an animation test. So with the animation test, along with rigging, you also have to do skin weighting, which I just used mostly automatic, very quick and dirty, and I just clean anything up that's not great. So the animation test is where I find bugs, issues, and fix them. This could be automated if you're a technical person. If not, you just go through the process of doing a quick animation and intuitively find the things that don't work. And we're good to use this character. So I just need to make sure in the scene that I've organized the files to make sure that everything is okay to link and override into the other project. So I'm going to make his collection red because he's a cool character. And I've got to make sure all his pieces are in the actual file. So I divide, usually my characters, I divide into a shapes folder. So the shapes is usually a folder with geometry that I use in the rig. So for example, the hands has these arrows. So I have these arrows as shapes, which is actual geometry. And I keep these usually hidden inside the collection, but it has to be a child of the parent collection I will override. The hands collection I don't need. These lights I don't need, so I throw that into the extras. The tracer control, I also have a copy of the rig which I don't need. For space painterly, everything should be linked. I have the rig here. I have the eyeballs in a separate folder. I have the other meshes. This actually could be a sub collection of the mesh. And now it's good to go. So let me just save the scene. And there's a possibility that I could save this particular character inside the asset library, so he's easier access. So I will actually do that. I'm going to use the asset snapshot add-on, which I talked about a couple of episodes back, where you can, but it may crash because I don't know if it needs to compile the shaders or not. So I'll just use the normal blend away. Right click, mark as asset. And it will just use a normal 3D viewport render. So it'll be in gray. And we're good. I can use this. I'm going to drag this into my folder called HD. So he's an HD character. Save the scene. It's already in the libraries folder. So if I click on the asset library paths in the edit, by the way, this doesn't exist in Blender. So you have to go the long way. find the preferences, go into the preferences file paths, and then do the asset libraries. And then from there, you got to make sure your path and library is set. This is important because the next step is dependent on this particular step. So I'm going to do that with my other character, Kirsten. Kirsten is the secondary character of this particular shot, and this is what I need. So let's get back to some theory. So this was the first part. The first part was getting a character from concept to character in one day. All of this part here was the first part of the day because I used the concept of using Midjourney, and I used Blockout by using a kitbash kit, which was prepared from other people or myself, from pre-approved models as part of the project. I did my detail modeling manually, but it's not too complex, almost like Blockout because of my particular project. And because of this particular painterly style, I don't have to focus too much on perfect topology, perfect hard surface modeling, perfect loops or anything. I just need things to look quick and dirty and smooth and rounded and blobby because that's the style of the paint. So I also don't need UVs because it's all about the shaders. Depends on your project. Typically, this process here could give you another day or two of work. If you're doing this for a AAA game asset or like a movie characters or like something like that, you may need to spend a lot of time on your shaders, on your textures, on your UVs. You got to bake your details, you got to optimize everything, and this step can take a bit longer depending on your project and your design, which is all dependent on the concept and your general design. And then you got to focus on the rigging. It could be quick, that's another half a day, or it could be automated even more if you have a good base rig already set up and you just adjust the base rig with everything you need for this particular character and you're good to go. And then from there, the animation test, you could have a preset animation test, for example, Mixamo animation rig, which is super handy to help you see any issues and fix it up. So you got the character in one day. So my next question to you, if you're still here, is why? Why do we need to work this in such a quick way? Why do I need to cut so many corners to get the job done? And the next step is, okay, so now that I have a character, what do we do with him and her? So here's Kirsten. I just need to make sure everything is okay. And unfortunately, she's not actually, her rig isn't finished. Hey. Oh yeah, because I was still designing on her hair. So we won't be using Kirsten for now, because I haven't actually finished her rig. She's halfway done. Let me just save the scene, but I will use her as a reference. So the armature, her hair, the body parts, and I'll just call her Chai. We'll call this Kirsten 01. So when it comes to television or cinema, sometimes you have up to 300 characters. Maybe you have 2 principal characters with like 4 secondary characters, with all these extras in the world that maybe is animated on the bus or other aspects, and you could have many characters. You could also have hundreds of shots. Maybe you have like a short film of 5 minutes, and each shot is going to be between 2 seconds to 30 seconds per shot. So with that, you've already got a minimum of at least 12 shots for those. Sorry, not 12. That's a 5-minute film. So you got at least 10 shots for the short film. And that's very, it's very slow paced. 30-second shots are a very long shot. So you got to think about your edit, your idea, and you think, okay, so you have a lot of shots and a lot of things to do. So I gotta practically produce these characters like in a factory with a very good rig, a very good concept, and a very good idea. And I need to have it all ready so that I can start just working on the story. Let's take a quick look at my story. In television, you usually have, or with cinema, you usually have a script and you have an animatic or a storyboard or a bit of both, and you work with these artists or other people who have worked on the story for you. And then from there, you may have a position called layout. So as a layout artist, it's a very dynamic role. So a layout artist may be responsible for, let me just get here in the layout folder. Here's a test. So surprise, surprise, my girlfriend actually, she doesn't know 3D, but I sat down with her over maybe half an hour and told her the basic controls would be for artists, and told her, okay, so this is how the asset library works. These are the transform controls and the viewport controls. This is your focus. Now let's see if you can make a small little city. So here we have my girlfriend's first homework. And she did a really fun job to get this done. So I need a better visibility. So let's go to 10 kilometers because it's a big city. So she created a basic template of a downtown area from the library that I need or have, which works. If I go into the camera, now where am I? I can now pick and choose a particular section or area that I need for this shot. So let me just close the library asset library and find a cool area. So I'm thinking maybe in like a top of a building or something, looking down. I'm not sure how high up though. Around here is pretty cool. So let's take a quick look. So you're a layout artist and you want to get into the concept of animation, or maybe you're an independent artist and you have to do the role of both the storyboarder, the animatic block out person, the modeler, the rigger, the shader artist, the look development artist, the technical director who's doing all the cool shortcuts and add-ons and hacks to get the job done faster. And now you're at the stage of layout. So we're still in the asset library. We've got all these collections added to the scene. Perfectly fine. We have this camera. Let me just clean it up a bit. This is, I'm just going to organize this as well as the song 5, shot 7. This is the last shot. And let's save that for now. Let's take a look at the scene. So here in the animatic, I've already rendered out this particular video with some ideas. The song 5, animatic 1. Here it is. Alright, so we're going to the last shot. Song 5, 7. And it's basically this. A couple kissing on a bridge or something inside the city. Looking over the city, they might be in silhouette, they might be not. And that's about it. That's the last shot. So I might start with a camera that's looking in the city, that's raising up, sees the couple, and settles at the couple. Maybe. I'm not sure yet. But that's the general style of the shot that I want to do. Outside on a platform, walk away above the street below. There's a couple making out over the lights. The traffic flies below them as they're stuck in their romantic time over the lights. So, nighttime, we got a city, and now we need an angle. So as a layout artist, you got to think about the next steps. So we've got the character, and we focus on that particular concept. Let me just check my socials for a moment to make sure that there's no questions that I'm missing before I start this next step. Just give me a moment. Hopefully it doesn't slow my computer down too much. Okay. No, it's okay. Okay, I think we're fine for now. I think. I hope it's clear so far. Oh, there's someone in the chat in the Q&A. Cool. Hello, Killin. I'm glad you're here, actually. And Marty as well. Well, yeesh. I didn't notice you guys had connected. I've been so focused. Sorry about that. Okay, so we've covered basically the concept of taking a concept and building a character, which we've done in one day. Basically, because we used Midjourney for the concept, we used a Kitbash kit for the blockout, we did some detail modeling with some short hacks, and we've created an art style which doesn't require a lot of work to make it look okay. We used automatic rigging with the guide rig. We used some quick rigging tools and things like that to make the bendy bones that I've talked before. We did the animation test, and now from there we're focusing on the layout. So from layout, here it is. So now we're doing we're addressing the layout, we're setting up the animation to render. So with that, we're back in this world here. So we can go into our asset library and we can load up the key components of this particular project. And the key components is the person, the actor. So we're going into HD and it's currently loading the library. You can see in the top here or in the bottom, depends where your start bar is. But Blender or Boi Addons will tell you if it's loading a character or not. So I'm going to use this character as my reference. It looks relatively similar. I'm going to link her as an instance. So make sure that instance is turned on. And I'm going to just snap her to, she's very small. So that just gives you the scale of the world to give you an idea. So that's a general idea. Now I'm going to bring in Tracer. I'm also going to link him in. But this time, I'm going to make sure that in this post panel, I'm going to turn off instance. So this is going to create a collection with these linked collection buttons. So you can see that some things are linked, other things are linked with links, and everything's good to go. If we zoom in a little bit, here he is, and it looks like he's got some problems. Damn. His hair is back. So these are things I probably need to still test. But let's see if we override and fix it. So if we right click in Blender, you would have to go to Library Override, another menu, then another menu. But here in Boi Addons is just one level. And you click Make Library Override, selected in Content. And that should override everything. Even this one should be overridden, but it didn't. But oh well. I have to test and see why is he not. Oh, it's the body weights. Ah, that's weird. Okay, so this is an issue that you usually find, is that when you weight something incorrectly, you can move the entire character. And if the weights are at 0 or nothing, then this will destroy the character. So I'm just gonna save this for now. And let's go back to the original scene. And while it's doing that, so we're going to go from dressing layout to animation. Whoops. To animation to render. And with that, we start with setting up the blockout, the animation blockout, or the layout blockout. You can use blockout for many things. Blockout in modeling, blockout for animation, blockout for layout. So setting up the layout blockout, mainly because it's like you're using blocks to kind of get your general idea, and you set it out from your inside your mind out onto the paper or to the software. So if I'm in this case, my girlfriend spent maybe an hour or two or a couple hours just setting up the layout of that particular scene. So here's my character. Let me just check and see what's wrong. There it is. It's because this hair is not actually parented to the rig. There you go. And the other hair is not actually parented to the rig too. So this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, we will parent it to the rig. Got to make sure all your meshes are parented to the rig. It's important. So keep transform. And now if I move the rig, the hair stays behind, or stays with the rig. So this particular problem here is because of the skin weights of the bones. So I need to go inside of my bones in my pose mode, switch to my deformers, which would be these here. And as you can see, some of these bones are staying behind. And the reason is why? Because this one has a bad constraint. There, fixed. That was just a constraint. So good, I'm happy it was an easy fix, but you need to think in an analytical mind and wonder if your skins are stuck to the center of the world, it's because they have not enough weights. If something in the mesh disappeared, it's because it wasn't parented correctly. And you need to run through like a slight little checklist and you're good to go. So let's just reset his view like this. Hit save, load up the other scene, and get back to work. If you're working in like a studio or working with a team, usually you have somebody who's in charge of the rigging, which is the technical director. And you'll be like, hey, I found this problem on the rig. Could you fix it? And they might have a platform like Perforce, or they might have a tracker in GitHub, or they may be using Anchor Point, which I highly recommend, or Google Sheets, or you got to talk to your supervisor and you say, hey, it doesn't work, it's broken. And then they update the rig. And then inside the scene, since I've already linked this character and overridden this character, as you can see here he is. He now, whoops, I need to go back to active tool. If I move him, he doesn't have any more problems. Perfect. He's ready to rumble. So let's go to the top of the building to see if she's still waiting for him. And sure enough, there she is. So layout, blockout is basically planning your shot from a essence of a proposal and an open mind. This is the creative fun part. So as a layout artist, this is where you like set up three things: environment, characters, camera. And then from there, you start thinking about things to do in time, which is interpreting the story over time. And with that, let's take a closer look. So let me just repeat that. So we're setting the layout blockout. So that means loading up the assets, which could be environment, props, characters. And then from there we load up the assets and then we set them up. So that means camera, characters, and the world, basically. And So those are the two steps that I usually have when I set out the block out. So let's just do that quickly and just kind of get an idea of this particular shot of how I'm going to do it. So there was one aspect that I really liked was like, I'm not sure being this far away is going to help. And I'm not sure, maybe I want them kind of like on a bridge that's kind of floating out here. So let me just zoom in and let's get them in the end position. I'm thinking about the end of the story. So I want them silhouetted with the sky, like this, and I want them kind of doing their thing. They just had a really good time in the downtown city, full of very hedonistic, kind of full of party. Whoa, where'd they go? And that's what they're doing. So I'm going to have them kind of silhouetted or kind of like this, silhouetted by the cityscape in the background here. So this is my end shot. I'm going to go into my animation file, go into the camera, attributes, and just set my frame range. So usually they give you a frame range of how long the shot will be. Let's just pretend it's 250 frames. Last keyframe, going to keyframe the camera. So let's just do that. And it's keyframed. It's set. This is my first camera. So at the beginning, maybe what we could do is we could like, this is where we start to plan the camera a little bit. And I want the camera to kind of start looking down, I suppose, over the immensity of the city. Like there's the roads down below, more city, more stuff like that. Then another bridge. And this would be the start of my keyframe. So if I press play, the camera's rising, and then it will be slowing, and we see them doing their thing. And maybe I'll lengthen the shot because I have some creative liberty, and then I will track into the couple just a little bit, just to focus on them a little bit as they do their thing. No, I'm not. Yes. All right, so now I've got my shot relatively sorted. Now I got the general idea of setting up my environment and my props around this character to set up the dress of the world, the details. Let's go back to my assets, and you can use the asset library to do the rest. So now that we've hit more or less 1 hour here, let me just take a look here. Oh, Killian, you've been writing out in Twitch, thank you. Make them kiss. The story is now a romance, you're right. So, you're quite right. It kind of ends in romance. I wanted to add that little touch to the story, which is going to be fun to animate them both. Hopefully I can find a good mix of my animation for that. If not, doing it manually, hold them still, relatively still. Keep it easy. So now I have this in my library. I've set up a downtown district folder, which has all of my files, including bridges, including different chunks of different things. And I can use this to create what I need to create. So I'm going to make sure I'm always in my linked mode, but I still need to change this. It's going to break if I link. So if I link this file in, I got to make sure it is on instance. Thank God. All right, so I'm going to use this bridge here. Go into the camera mode, bring it up a bit. It's kind of a gigantic bridge piece. Maybe I'll make it a bit smaller. Bring it around. In this case, sometimes when you get lost in the world, like maybe not animating to the center of the world, either you can move the entire world to the center, so it's a bit easier to orientate yourself, or you can use the 3D cursor and create like a bounding box null with a certain, like a general size of your work. And you can call this like the focus box or something. So whenever you get lost, you just select the focus box at the size that it's supposed to be, like this. And so when you focus into it, you're actually back in the world that you want to be. And you're going to put this at the center of the world so you don't get lost. And then from there, we've got the bridge through their heads. And if I'm in render mode, which might take a while to compile, Killing, you're always lost in the world, I understand. But yeah, 52 shaders to compile. But I like the bridge design because then I can see a little bit underneath it. So I'll bring this to the side a bit. Now we've got this giant bridge. Now from there, I'm going to use, let's go to the bottom view or the start of the animation. So we can see them there in the moonlight, and down below we've got the city. So you can see that we haven't used everything in the city from this particular shot, which means we can go back to using the other parts, and we have no sunlight. So let me just think about the lighting a little bit. I'll use a moonlight. Oh, it's a point light. And also another aspect about layout is you start to plan the lighting. So we've done this. We've loaded up the assets, we've got the environment, we've got the props, we've got the characters, and we set up the camera in general, the characters in the world to some degree. So now from there we start thinking about lighting proposals and start thinking about the detail environment. So the lighting proposals is very important because this is where we interpret what the storyboard artist is doing. We interpret the concept artist, and we also interpret the other artists who've been working on the props and the designs and the director's goals, or even your own goals for the story. So if we take a look, let me find the images from the animatic of the artists that I haven't hired anyone really. But for this particular project, I made a couple of animatic images. And these are the ones that I've used. Some of them are photos, some of them are actual generated images. Using AI saves a lot of time and helps you get a general idea of what you want. So this is one of my favorite images of that particular shot. So let's just quickly load it up into PureRef. Where did PureRef go? Here it is. Take a closer look, and we've got bright lights and points. The general fill light is a light blue, and it's filling out everything. And so there's like oranges, reds, pinks, yellows with a nice light blue, and everything else is dark and contrasty. So that's our color scheme that we're going to try play with. Thanks. And so I can start working my lighting with sun lamp to get the nice dark shadows. And I'll make the sun lamp a nice kind of a pale blue. There we go. And let's just angle it. Just put it here so I can see where it's going. Kind of angle it around in the city. Move the frame. Oops. Move the frame. What's going on? There we go. Oh, it's too hypersensitive. Here's an interesting shot. Move the light here as well. Since it's the sun, it doesn't really matter where in the world it is. So if I go into look div mode, it's working like that. Go into normal mode and actually see the lighting. And I can use that to start filling out my world. So I could use a background color as well. Kind of get the general idea of the colors of the world. I can focus on how strong it's going to fill in the world, but I want dark shadows, so it's not going to fill in just a little bit. I got the general sun lamp, and from there I can start focusing, okay, what sun or what angle of the moon would give us the most detail in the city. I think this one would be the nicest. You know, halfway, 3/4 from the camera. Move the camera up. There we go. And as you can see, I can't see any characters yet. So what I'm going to do is I need to make sure this bridge is giving me a good point of silhouette so I can see the characters like this. And now that I have my characters generally in place, I can also make this bridge a bit smaller. I have that here. So this could be a really cool lighting. I just light up the sky a little bit more and they could be in silhouette. Or I could do the opposite. The sky is nice and dark, like at night, and they are in the light. So I have an option to explore as a layout artist to start bringing in the lighting, or a lighting artist. You know, sometimes a layout artist doesn't have the responsibility of lighting up the worlds, and they just need to load the characters, do the rough animation, propose the block out animation, propose the camera animations, propose the general concept so that a storyboard artist can continue their work with grease pencil, or an animator can take the block out animation and do his own animation to the new cameras, or propose new cameras. Or maybe you give this scene to another lighting artist and he will start to fill in the lights for you. There are a number of different ways, different things you could do. But in this case, because we're doing an independent project, we're going to be focusing on we're doing everything because we can. And that's the beauty of the democratization of this open source software. So with that, I'm going to use a very strong, maybe a bit too strong. I'm going to start lighting, okay, they're behind glass. I'm going to have to light them from inside the building. You can use the point light there, that is. And I can use this as my start focusing on the lighting a bit more and focusing on different things. So here I could get in my point light. This point light could be the pink one. And this could be, whoops, just fill in the lighting here. And I start thinking about what are the things that I want to show. So I'm using these big lines. These big lines to point to them, but one of them's in the way. So maybe I could use something else to do this. And we're good to go. And with that, I've run out of time, but I think this is a solid introduction to this particular shot. And I can start focusing on what type of animation I want to do, if it's going to have animation, how am I going to set up the scene, how am I going to work the lighting and the angles and everything to set up where the person's supposed to look, the focus of the actual story, that they are far up in the city, and the city is very busy down below. So down here, I need to fill this up with buildings, air traffic, ground traffic, more bridges, more lights, more volumetrics, and it's all bright down here.